Friends, if you are excited to watch the thrilling and action-packed movie Ballerina 2025 in English, then you must like this video because today's video is going to be super interesting. And if you are visiting our channel for the very first time, don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you can keep getting updates on the latest movies, reviews, and all the fascinating details about your favorite films. Friends, in today's video, we're going to talk about Ballerina 2025, a movie that has already caught everyone's attention with its powerful story, amazing action sequences, and brilliant performances. We will tell you everything about this film, what this movie is all about, where you can watch it, and on which platforms it will be available. Whether you're looking to stream it on an OTT platform or waiting to catch it on a satellite TV channel, I will give you all the information you need. Not only that, but in today's video, we will take a deep dive into the making of Ballerina 2025. We will explore the work done by the technical team, how the music department has added life to the film, and what happened during the pre-production and filming stages. I will also share some interesting behind-the-scenes details, including how the movie was made during the post-production phase, what was the budget, and how much this movie is expected to earn at the box office. You will get to know whether this film is likely to be a blockbuster or not. Along with this, we will also discuss the complete storyline of Ballerina 2025. What is the main plot of the movie, what makes it unique, and why people are so excited about it. I will give you a small review to help you decide if this is the kind of movie you would love to watch. But that's not all. We will also talk about some hidden and fascinating facts about the film that you might not have heard before. We will look at the entire star cast, discuss which actor is playing which role, and how well they have performed in their characters. Who stands out? Who surprises the audience? You will find out everything. So friends, make sure you stay with us till the end of the video because I promise you, it's going to be full of exciting information and fun details about Ballerina 2025. Let's get started and dive deep into this amazing movie. Friends, get ready because we are about to dive deep into the roller coaster story of Ballerina 2025, and let me tell you, this is not your typical straight line, beginning to end kind of movie. No, this story dances between timelines, flips perspectives, throws surprises at you when you least expect them, and pulls you right into the emotional storm of a woman who is not just fighting for revenge. She's fighting to figure out who she really is. So, how does it all start? The movie wastes no time. It doesn't slowly set the scene or politely introduce characters. It literally grabs you by the collar and throws you straight into the middle of a dangerous mission. You're immediately standing right next to our lead, a ballerina-turned-assassin, as she moves through dark streets with purpose, grace, and a terrifying calm. You can feel something is already in motion. It's like walking into a dance performance where the music has already been playing for a while. You quickly realize, this isn't the beginning of her story, this is just where we get to see it. The movie plays this beautiful, risky game with time. It jumps backwards and forwards, but not in a gentle, flashback kind of way. It throws you into her childhood with barely a warning, a young girl on the stage, surrounded by beauty. Then snap, you're in a cold, brutal training facility where that same girl is being turned into a weapon. And just as you think you've understood her past, you're yanked back into the present where she's already in the middle of an unstoppable mission. The film doesn't just use time as a background. Time is part of the story's rhythm. Every jump fills in a new piece of her puzzle. The more you see of her past, the more you understand her present choices, her pain, her fury, and her hunger for truth. The first massive turning point arrives when she discovers the people she once trusted. The ones who trained her, shaped her, and controlled her life, have been lying to her all along. They didn't just raise her to be a weapon, they used her to clean up their mess, to take out their enemies, and now they want her erased because she knows too much. This is where the story flips from being just a mission to a personal rebellion. She's not just going after her targets anymore. She's going after the entire system that built her and then tried to break her. And friends, this is where the story starts sprinting. From safe houses to dark back alleys, from luxury clubs to abandoned theaters, she's moving, fighting, surviving, always just one step ahead, always chasing the next piece of the truth. What makes this journey even more exciting is how the movie plays with perspectives. Sometimes, We are right there in her head. We see what she sees. We feel what she feels, her panic, her rage, her flashes of painful memory. Other times, the camera pulls back and we see her through the eyes of others, the people who fear her, the agents who hunt her, the ones who admire her from a distance. It's like the film lets us wear different pairs of glasses, each showing us a slightly different version of who she is. To some, she's a cold-blooded assassin. To others, she's a legend. To herself, well, that's the question she's trying to answer. And then, when you think you've got the story figured out, comes the next big twist. Something so personal, so close to her heart, that it completely changes her mission. She discovers something about her own family, about where she really came from, about the people who abandoned her or maybe saved her, depending on how you look at it. Suddenly, this isn't just about revenge. It's about identity. It's about breaking free, not just from the people chasing her, but from the shadow of the person they tried to force her to become. From here, the story shifts into overdrive. The action is fast, brutal, but what really hits you are the quiet moments. Moments where she stands alone, where the noise fades and you realize how heavy her journey really is. These pauses are powerful. They make you feel her exhaustion, her doubts, and her burning desire to find something real in a life built on lies. And just when you think she's reaching the end of the road, the story pulls another twist. The people who seemed like the villains might not be the real monsters. The people she trusted might have more secrets. The system she's fighting against might be even bigger and darker than she imagined. It's like every door she opens just leads to another maze. The story doesn't slow down. It keeps spinning, keeps surprising, keeps daring you to keep up. The final sequences are intense, full of explosive action, quick escapes, close combat, and moments where you feel like everything could fall apart at any second. But through all of this, what makes the story truly exciting is that it never lets you forget that this is her fight. A fight not just against enemies, but against the cage she was born into. Ballerina 2025 doesn't just unfold. It unfolds like a dangerous dance, with sudden spins, breathtaking lifts, and hard falls. It's a story that keeps you guessing, keeps you leaning forward, keeps you asking, who is she really? And by the time you think you have the answer, the story will have already changed the question. Friends, this is not just a movie. It's an experience, and it's one wild, unforgettable ride. Friends, buckle up because we are going to take a long, deep dive into the heart of Ballerina 2025, where the real magic isn't just in the fights, the missions, or the chases. It's in the people. The characters in this movie are not the kind that show up, say a few cool lines, and walk off the screen. No, these characters feel like they've been living full lives long before we met them. They're layered, unpredictable, full of contradictions, and that's what makes them so fascinating to watch. Every character has a story, every decision has weight, and every relationship feels like it could either heal them or destroy them. Let's start with the star of the show, the ballerina. She's not your typical action movie lead who walks in like a machine and never changes. She's someone who is constantly battling herself. On the surface, she's this perfect, dangerous assassin, trained to complete missions without asking questions. She moves with precision. She fights with skill. She makes it look effortless. But underneath all of that, she's a storm of emotions. She's confused, angry, lonely, and desperate to figure out who she really is beyond the life that was forced on her. What's incredible about her character is that she doesn't start as a hero. She starts as someone who's surviving, doing what she was trained to do. She's sharp, but she's not free. She's trapped inside the role other people created for her. And throughout the movie, you get to watch her slowly crack that shell. Step by step, she pulls back the layers, questions her orders, challenges her purpose, and begins to make choices for herself. It's not always clean. Sometimes she slides back into old patterns. Sometimes she lashes out in ways that hurt the people she cares about, but that's what makes her real. Her growth is messy, painful, and full of moments where you genuinely don't know if she's going to rise or fall. Her mentors add another layer to this complex web. The people who trained her, especially one key figure who is like a father to her, seem to be guides at first. They seem wise, experienced, like they have her best interests at heart. But the deeper the story goes, the more you realize these mentors have their own hidden agendas. They didn't just train her, they built her. They shaped her into the perfect weapon and then tried to keep her on a tight leash. And here's where it gets really interesting. Even the mentors aren't one-dimensional villains. They genuinely believe they're doing what's best. They think control is the only way to keep her alive. They see her as their creation, and letting her think for herself feels dangerous to them. This complicated push and pull, where sometimes they feel like protectors, sometimes like manipulators, keeps you constantly guessing about their true intentions. There are moments where you see real care in their eyes, and then suddenly you see the coldness of someone who would sacrifice her if it meant completing their mission. That's the kind of emotional roller coaster this movie puts you on. Now let's talk about the antagonists, the people chasing her. They're not just cardboard cutout bad guys. Some of them truly think she's a threat to the world. Some of them believe they are saving lives by stopping her. There's one antagonist in particular who shares a history with her, a tangled, painful history. Their battles are not just about guns and fists. They're filled with unspoken words, with the weight of their past, with things they wish they could say, but can't because they're on opposite sides now. Every time they face off, it's not just physical. It's personal. You can feel that their connection runs deep, and their conflict is about much more than who wins the fight. It's about betrayal, guilt, regret, and all the things they never got to fix. But here's where the story gets really juicy, the allies. Some of the most powerful moments in this movie come from the people who decide to stand beside her. Some of these allies come from unexpected places. There's an old friend from her training days who shows up just when she's about to give up. Their reunion is not some big, tearful hug. It's tense, sharp, filled with history and anger. They fight, they argue, they push each other, but deep down, there's a bond that neither of them can break. Their relationship is rough around the edges, but it's real. They remind each other of who they used to be before they got pulled into this brutal world. Their conversations are like dance steps. Sometimes they move in sync, sometimes they step on each other's toes, but together, they become stronger. There's also a mysterious outsider who appears later in the story, someone who seems to know more about her past than she does. At first, you don't know if this person is an enemy or an ally. There's tension, there's suspicion, but as the story unfolds, this outsider helps unlock a truth that changes everything for her. And these shifting alliances keep the story alive. You're constantly asking, who can she trust? Who's going to betray her next? Who's genuinely trying to help her, and who's just using her for their own gain? The beauty of Ballerina 2025 is that the relationships are not clean, they're not black and white, and that makes them feel honest. Trust is always fragile. Friendships are always tested. Loyalties shift like the wind. Even minor characters, the people she bumps into on her journey, the ones who seem like background figures, are written with purpose. They each reveal a little more about her, about the world she's trapped in, and about the price of the life she's chosen. Watching her grow is thrilling because it's not a simple straight line from broken to healed. She stumbles. She falls back. Sometimes she fights for freedom, and sometimes she runs from it because she's afraid of who she might be if she's not a weapon anymore. The relationships around her either push her forward or pull her back, and each one of them leaves a mark on her journey. By the time you're deep into the movie, you're not just watching an assassin on a mission. You're watching a person desperately searching for herself, navigating a maze of lies, love, betrayal, and hope. The emotional weight of her journey gives every fight, every decision, every quiet moment so much more power. In Ballerina 2025, the characters are not passengers in the story, they are the story. Their conflicts, their heartbreaks, their connections are what drive every twist and every moment of action. They are layered, messy, complicated, and that's what makes them unforgettable. This is a movie where you're not just cheering for the next fight, you're holding your breath for the next conversation, the next confrontation, the next reveal that will change everything. That's what makes this world so gripping. The characters feel real, their struggles feel personal, and their growth feels earned. And that is what keeps you locked in, fully invested from start to finish. Friends, Now, let's go even deeper into the heartbeat of Ballerina 2025. The performances that absolutely light up the screen and breathe life into this thrilling, emotionally charged story. This isn't just about actors showing up, hitting their marks, and delivering lines. No, this is about performances that live in every frame, performances that grab you, shake you, and refuse to let go. Every look, every pause, every whispered word feels like it's carrying the weight of a lifetime. Let's start with our leading lady, the ballerina herself. She's not just acting, she's fully transforming. The way she carries herself, you can almost feel the battle scars etched into her soul. She moves with this perfect blend of grace and danger, like she's balancing on the edge of a blade. And what makes her performance so magnetic is how much she says without speaking. Her eyes tell entire stories. You can see the flickers of doubt, the rush of rage, the waves of grief passing through her face in the middle of a fight scene. It's not just physical power, it's emotional power. She's not just executing fight choreography. She's fighting with intention, with a deep emotional charge behind every movement. You can tell that every time she takes down an enemy, she's not just defending herself. She's wrestling with her past, her guilt, her questions about who she really is. But it's not just her physicality that steals the show. In the quiet moments, she completely owns the screen. You'll see her sitting alone, staring at a photograph, her hand trembling slightly, and in that single moment, she gives you everything. You understand the layers of trauma, the years of conditioning, the desperate hunger for freedom. She has this gift for making silence feel louder than a battlefield. And when she speaks, it's never just about the words. Her voice shifts subtly depending on who she's with, firm with her enemies, vulnerable with her allies, almost robotic when she slips back into the assassin mindset she's trying to escape. Watching her perform is like watching someone peel off layers of armor, piece by painful piece, as she slowly figures out who she is beneath all the control. Now, her mentor. Oh, this performance is a masterclass in controlled chaos. On the surface, he's this calm, steady figure, the one who trained her, the one who seems like he's always got the plan. But the actor brings this incredible tension to the role. He doesn't need to explode to show you he's cracking. He does it with the tiniest shifts in his expression, with the hesitation before he gives an order, with the way his voice drops just a fraction when he's confronted by the consequences of his own choices. He plays this mentor as someone who's fighting to keep his grip on his own creation, but you can see in his eyes that he knows he's losing her, and maybe, deep down, part of him thinks she deserves to get away. The most beautiful part? He never fully lets you figure him out. One scene, he feels like a father trying to protect his daughter. The next, he feels like a general sending his best soldier to die for the mission. That push and pull makes every one of his scenes pulse with emotional electricity. The villain. Oh, what a delicious performance this is. He's not loud, not theatrical, but dangerously calm, like the type of person who can ruin your life with a soft-spoken sentence. He has this unnerving stillness, like he's always 10 steps ahead, like nothing rattles him. But the actor gives him just enough of a crack in his armor that you can tell his obsession with the ballerina isn't just about the mission, it's personal. There's history there. The scenes where he confronts her feel like they're dripping with unfinished conversations, old wounds, and twisted admiration. He isn't just chasing her because it's his job. He's chasing her because she represents something he lost, something he can't control, and that drives him to the edge. His calm, his steady voice, the almost surgical way he handles every situation, it's chilling. You can't look away because he feels like a walking, breathing threat, not because he's physically intimidating, but because he knows exactly where to hit someone emotionally. And then we get to her old friend, the one who re-enters her life when she's spiraling. This actor brings the perfect mix of warmth, stubbornness, and heartbreak to the role. He's not just the sidekick, he's the emotional compass she didn't know she needed. He plays the role with so much raw honesty. You can tell he's angry at her for the life she's chosen, but you can also see he would still walk through fire for her. The chemistry between them is off the charts, not forced, not overly sweet. It's messy, real, and full of unresolved tension. Their banter is sharp, quick, layered with old memories and new pain. You can feel that they've hurt each other in the past, that they still carry the scars, but also that they still deeply, stubbornly care. The actor plays him as someone who hides his emotions behind humor, who cracks jokes to avoid saying what he really feels, and that makes him heartbreakingly relatable. When he finally lets his guard down, when he shows his true fear of losing her again, the moment hits like a punch to the chest. Even the smaller roles, and this is where the movie really shines, are treated with incredible care. There's a mysterious handler who seems like a background player at first, but the actor adds this perfect layer of quiet menace. You don't know whether to trust him, and that ambiguity makes him fascinating to watch. There's also an informant with barely a handful of scenes, but the performance is so sharp, so full of tension, that you remember him long after he's gone. He plays it like he's always one word away from either helping the ballerina or selling her out. These little supporting performances are like hidden gems scattered throughout the film. They aren't just there to move the plot forward. They're there to enrich the world, to make you feel like this story is happening in a place full of complicated people with their own lives, their own fears, their own agendas. The absolute beauty of these performances is that they're not just performances. They feel like inhabited lives. Everyone on screen, from the lead to the briefest cameo, feels like they've lived long, hard lives before the cameras ever caught up to them. They carry their backstories in their eyes, in the way they stand, in the way they hesitate before pulling a trigger or reaching for a hand. You can see the weight of decisions made, the regret of friendships lost, the fire of battles still burning inside them. These performances turn the film from a simple revenge thriller into an emotional battlefield where every moment matters, where every relationship is a high-stakes gamble, where every word feels like it could save or shatter someone. And that's what makes this movie not just thrilling to watch, but deeply unforgettable. Let's go even deeper into how the director of Ballerina 2025 completely takes control of the story, not just by telling it, but by sculpting it, by shaping every second, every shadow, every breath to create a world that feels so sharp, so intimate, and so electrifying that you almost forget you're watching a film and start feeling like you've been dropped inside the story. The director isn't just sitting in a chair calling action and cut. No, they are orchestrating an experience, designing a ride that pulls you in, tightens around you, and refuses to let you drift away for even a moment. This is not the kind of direction that's flashy for the sake of being flashy. It's elegant, it's purposeful, it's stylish in a way that feels almost invisible at first because it's working so well that you don't immediately notice how masterfully you've been guided from one emotional peak to the next. The director sets the tone right out of the gate, not with loud, over-the-top spectacle, but with mood, with tension, with atmosphere that seeps into you like cold air. The opening sequence doesn't just introduce a location, it introduces a feeling, a quiet unease that tells you this world isn't safe. The streets are slick with rain, the corners hum with quiet threats, and the way the camera glides, almost like it's searching, gives you this constant sensation that you're being watched. The director makes the city pulse like a living, breathing character. There's an underlying rhythm in the way scenes unfold, and you can feel the director's grip on that rhythm the entire time. It speeds up just when your heartbeat is starting to slow down. It pulls back just when you think you're about to get an answer. It's a constant game of push and pull, and it's absolutely thrilling to experience. And then there's the pacing. Oh, the pacing is so smartly crafted here. It's not a flat-out sprint like some action films that race from one fight to another as if the goal is to exhaust you. The director here understands the power of pacing like a musician understands the power of silence between notes. They know when to let a moment breathe, when to let the weight of a glance or the tension of a quiet room settle deep into your bones. Scenes don't rush to their endings. Conversations hang in the air just long enough to make you wonder what's left unsaid. And just when you think things might settle, the director cuts the cord, dropping you into an explosive moment of action that feels earned because you've been patiently held in the build-up. The tension is not just in the fights, it's in the waiting, in the pauses, in the choices the director makes to let you squirm in the silence. Now let's talk about the shot composition because this is where the director's style starts to gleam like a hidden blade. The way each shot is framed feels intentional, almost like a puzzle piece. When the ballerina is alone, the director often places her in wide, open spaces that make her feel small, isolated, as if the world around her is swallowing her whole. But when she's fighting, when she's locked in those personal, brutal battles, the camera closes in so tightly that you can practically feel her breath on your neck. It's not just about showing the fight, it's about trapping you inside it with her. The director uses space like a weapon. Wide shots to make her loneliness feel infinite, tight shots to make her battles feel suffocating. And the shifts between the two are so smooth, so carefully paced, that you almost don't notice how the framing is controlling your own sense of comfort. There's this recurring visual style the director uses where mirrors, glass, and reflections show up again and again, not just to look cool, but to constantly hint at the idea of duality, who the ballerina is now versus who she was trained to be. The director doesn't wave this in your face, but these tiny, clever visual cues sneak into the background of so many scenes. A reflection shattering as she makes a life-changing choice. A blurry figure behind glass reminding her of her old life. These choices give the film depth without ever feeling forced. And let's not skip over the sound design, because the director uses sound almost like an invisible hand to control your heartbeat. There are moments where the background noise, the hum of a city, the soft footsteps in an alley, the ticking of a clock, drops out completely, leaving you with nothing but the raw sounds of breathing, the faint stretch of leather gloves, the creak of a weapon being drawn. These moments of stripped-down sound are not accidents. They're precision strikes by the director to lock you into the ballerina's world. It's like time slows for her, and because of the director's choices, it slows for you too. It's a masterstroke that makes those moments of violence feel personal and overwhelming. Lighting is another signature move here. The director plays with shadows and soft glows in a way that paints the world as a place that's perpetually on the edge of darkness. Light is used sparingly, almost like it's a privilege in this world. When warm light appears, it's usually tied to memories, to fleeting moments of comfort or connection. But most of the film is drenched in cold blues and deep shadows that press in from the edges, constantly reminding us that safety is temporary and danger is never far away. It's like the lighting itself is holding secrets. One of the most brilliant things the director pulls off is the way they handle the emotional undercurrents of the story. It would have been so easy to lean heavily into action and let the emotional beats become background noise, but the director refuses to let that happen. They give space to the quiet, heavy moments, those lingering stares between old friends, those wordless moments of hesitation before pulling a trigger. The director trusts silence to speak volumes. There's a kind of emotional choreography happening here that's just as detailed and thrilling as the physical choreography in the fight scenes. And speaking of those fights, the director absolutely nails the balance between beauty and brutality. The action is not flashy for the sake of flash. It's tight, focused, and shot in a way that makes you feel every hit. The fights tell a story. You can see the ballerina's training and the efficiency of her movements, but you can also see the exhaustion, the desperation, the improvisation when things go wrong. The director captures these fights not as moments of heroism, but as moments of survival. The way the camera moves, the speed of the cuts, the sound of the hits, it's all carefully orchestrated to make you feel the cost of every move. Even the transitions between scenes carry a sense of deliberate craftsmanship. Sometimes the camera will pull away from a fight, from a city street, and drift upward into quiet, distant skylines, almost like the director is giving us a moment to catch our breath, while still reminding us how small these characters are in the grand, cold world they inhabit. Other times, the director will cut quickly, sharply, forcing us to feel the jarring shift in pace and emotion, like we're stumbling alongside the characters. The director weaves all these elements together: pacing, shot composition, lighting, sound, performance, emotional beats, into something that feels organic, something that grips you by the collar and drags you fully into the story. It's not just a movie you watch. Let's go deeper, because the cinematography in Ballerina 2025 doesn't just capture the story, it embodies it. It's as if the camera itself is alive, learning, reacting, breathing alongside the ballerina, and the way each shot is constructed feels like it's wired directly into the emotions of the characters. This isn't the kind of cinematography that sits quietly in the background and politely records the action. This is visual storytelling that grabs you by the collar and drags you right into the middle of every moment, whether it's a whisper in the dark or a fight that feels like it might shatter bones. The way the camera moves, the way the light falls, the way the shadows swallow and reveal, it all works together like a symphony, carefully orchestrated to make sure you're not just watching the story unfold, you're feeling it in your gut. Let's talk about the camera work. This film is obsessed with perspective, and it shows. There's this incredibly deliberate play between wide shots and claustrophobic close-ups. In the wider shots, the ballerina often looks like a small, solitary figure walking through endless city streets, sprawling warehouses, cavernous buildings that seem to go on forever. It's like the cinematographer is constantly reminding us that she's just one person standing against a machine much bigger than herself. But the magic happens when the camera suddenly flips the perspective. In the blink of an eye, we're no longer observers watching from a distance. The camera swoops in, locking onto her face, tracing the edge of her jaw, the flicker in her eyes, the tightness in her grip. It's like we're suddenly inside her head, sharing her focus, feeling the tension in her body. These sharp, intimate shifts make the audience feel every heartbeat, every decision, every breath that's held just a second too long. And when the action scenes come roaring in, the cinematography doesn't just show them, it dances with them. You can feel the weight of the camera as it sways, ducks, and spins, as if it's another silent partner in the fight. The way the camera captures these sequences is beautifully fluid, but never chaotic. It doesn't flail around trying to create fake tension. No, it moves with purpose. It follows the arc of a kick, it anticipates a dodge, it locks onto the moment just before a weapon lands. And sometimes it does something even more daring. It pulls away at the very moment you expect to see the most. It focuses instead on the ballerina's reaction, on the silent recoil, on the tremble in her hands after the violence is past. That choice speaks volumes. It's cinematography that understands that what happens after the fight can be just as powerful as the fight itself. Lighting in Ballerina 2025 deserves its own standing ovation. The cinematographer treats light as a character. Sometimes a friend, sometimes a betrayer, sometimes a fragile flicker that threatens to be swallowed by the darkness at any moment. For much of the film, we're plunged into a world of cold, harsh lighting where neon signs buzz faintly and overhead lamps cast cruel shadows that stretch forever. It's a world where darkness creeps into every frame, not to hide things but to remind us that in this story, safety is always temporary. But then, like a well-guarded secret, the film will occasionally break this pattern. Out of nowhere, you'll be hit with a warm, golden light. Maybe it's the sunlight catching in her hair. Maybe it's a soft glow spilling out of a window from a quiet cafe. Maybe it's just the flicker of a candle in a memory. These rare pockets of warmth are like oxygen, like little windows into the humanity she's fighting to hold on to. The cinematographer doesn't waste these moments. They're strategically placed, always arriving when the ballerina is at her most vulnerable or her most reflective. Let's not skip over the absolutely genius use of mirrors, reflections, and glass surfaces. The cinematography is obsessed with doubling the ballerina's image, splitting her, fragmenting her, sometimes showing her reflection taking up more space in the frame than her physical self. These choices aren't just visual flair. They quietly tell us that the ballerina is never quite sure who she is anymore. Is she the weapon she was trained to be? Is she the woman grieving the past? Is she the person fighting for her freedom? The constant, almost ghostly use of reflections whispers that she's always being watched by others, by her own past, by the version of herself she's trying to leave behind. Sometimes, the camera focuses not on her, but on her shadow stretching out ahead of her, as if her past is literally leading the way. These are the kinds of quiet, layered visual choices that give the cinematography an emotional depth that sneaks up on you. And the framing. Oh, the framing in this film is deliciously precise. Scenes where she's boxed in by door frames, hallways, fences, framing her as if she's trapped inside invisible cages even when no one else is around. And when the frame finally opens up, when she's in open spaces, when she's moving freely, it often feels jarring because the cinematography has made us so used to tight, suffocating spaces. Those wide-open shots don't feel freeing at first. They feel empty. They feel exposed. That's how carefully the visual rhythm has been controlled. It changes how you feel about space itself. The cinematography also toys with depth of field in incredibly smart ways. There are moments when the ballerina is the only thing in focus, the background blurring into a soft haze, isolating her completely. It's as if the rest of the world doesn't matter anymore. But then, there are scenes where the depth pulls back, letting you see the entire battlefield, the city stretching into infinity, the other players moving in the distance. The cinematographer uses this trick to shift your attention, sometimes letting you fall deep into her isolation, other times pulling you back to remind you that she's just one thread in a much larger web. The most breathtaking shots in the film aren't always the loudest ones. Sure, the rain-soaked fights lit by a single swinging light bulb are unforgettable. The silent chase through a hall of mirrors is pure visual poetry. The long, unbroken tracking shot that follows her as she flees through the back streets will have your pulse racing. But some of the most powerful moments come when the camera just sits perfectly still, holding on her face as a single tear refuses to fall, as her breathing steadies, as her hand flexes before making the next impossible choice. The cinematographer knows the power of restraint, and that's where this film's visuals strike deepest. The entire visual language of Ballerina 2025 is built to make you feel the story on a visceral level. It's a story told not just through dialogue or plot, but through light and shadow, through movement and stillness, through frames that squeeze you tight and then suddenly let you fall. The cinematography doesn't just capture the film, it becomes the film's pulse, its heartbeat, its silent scream. Every frame is a carefully constructed window into the ballerina's fractured world, and you can't help but lean closer, pulled in by the raw, intimate, haunting beauty of it all. Let's really dive into the heartbeat of Ballerina 2025 because the editing and pacing in this film are not just technical choices. They're a living, breathing rhythm that carries you through every pulse of the story. From the very first frame, the pacing takes you by the hand and you can immediately feel the beat. It's sharp, it's deliberate, it's like stepping onto a moving walkway that keeps shifting its speed without warning. The film doesn't settle into a predictable tempo. Instead, it constantly changes gears, playing a wicked game with your expectations. Just when you think you've found the rhythm, it swerves, it slows, it lunges forward. It pauses in a way that forces you to lean closer. It's like the pacing is alive, bending around the ballerina's emotional state, stretching out the seconds when her world is heavy and collapsing them when danger snaps into her space without mercy. The editing is so fluid and so tightly connected to the ballerina's journey that you don't even feel like you're watching cuts. You feel like you're slipping from one heartbeat to the next, caught inside the flow of her mind. There are these clever transitions that almost sneak past you. For example, a door slams in one scene and suddenly you're in another room, another time, another memory. A ringing sound from a gunshot fades into a phone buzzing in the next scene. A breath she takes while sitting alone bleeds into the rhythm of her footsteps in a fight. The editor stitches the entire film together like it's one continuous thread, weaving the past, present, and raw emotion into a seamless experience. Sometimes it feels like you've been dropped straight into the ballerina's bloodstream, flowing right alongside her panic, her grief, her rage. But what really sets the editing apart is the way it plays with the audience's attention. It's like the film is constantly daring you to keep up. You're sprinting through brutal fight scenes, shots snapping together like punches landing in rapid succession, and then the editor slams the brakes. Everything slows down, not in that artificial slow motion kind of way, but in this carefully stretched, almost unbearable pause. You find yourself sitting in those silences, noticing the tiny details, the tremble in her fingers, the flicker in her eyes, the sound of her heartbeat pounding in the stillness. The film gives you just enough time to process those moments, to feel the weight of them, before it whips you back into the next frantic sequence. It's this constant shifting between explosive speed and suffocating stillness that makes the pacing feel so alive. You're never allowed to coast. The rhythm always keeps you leaning forward, either racing to catch up or holding your breath, waiting for the next hit. The fight sequences are a masterclass in editing precision. The cuts are fast but not sloppy. They aren't just there to create fake intensity. They track the flow of movement like a dance. The editor knows exactly when to stay locked onto a single shot, letting you feel the weight and impact of each strike, and when to cut away just in time to shift perspective, to keep the energy surging forward. There's this incredible sense of momentum in these scenes, like the film itself is fighting alongside the ballerina, ducking, weaving, lunging with her. The pacing in these moments is brutal, relentless, but somehow never confusing. You always know where you are, who's hitting who, and how close she is to either victory or collapse. And just when the action hits its peak, the editor pulls the floor out from under you, slamming you into quiet again. Maybe she's gasping for breath. Maybe she's blinking away a memory that's resurfaced. Maybe she's standing in the aftermath of what she's just done. These moments don't just give the audience a break. They land with emotional force because the pacing has made you feel the rush, the exhaustion, the weight of every move she makes. The quieter scenes are not just there to fill time. They are loaded with pressure. The pacing in these moments is deceptively slow, like the film is asking you to sit in discomfort, to listen carefully, to notice what isn't being said. The editor stretches these scenes just enough to make you feel the silence pressing in, to make you wonder if something's about to explode. And then, with no warning, the film punches forward again, shattering the quiet with a sudden shift in tempo. It's this dance between stillness and chaos that keeps the pacing from ever feeling predictable. You never get too comfortable. The film never lets you settle into a rhythm for too long. The editing keeps shaking you awake, keeps pulling you back into the urgency of the ballerina's world. Even the montages in Ballerina 2025 don't follow the typical formula. These sequences, which could have easily been throwaway moments, are cut with such emotional precision that they become some of the most intimate parts of the film. You're not just watching her train, or prepare, or recover. You're watching her carry the weight of her past into every step, every breath, every decision. The editor uses fast, rhythmic cuts during these sequences, but always threads in tiny, almost hidden moments, a lingering glance at an old photo, the tightening of her grip on a weapon, the flicker of pain crossing her face in between punches. These cuts are like tiny emotional grenades, dropped just quickly enough to hit you before the next burst of movement pulls you forward. The film also toys with nonlinear storytelling in the edit. The way memories slip in and out of the present feels like you're inside her fractured psyche. You don't always realize you've been pulled into the past until the scene shifts back and you're left piecing together what just happened. The editor doesn't draw big flashing arrows to tell you when you're in a memory. It's woven in so smoothly that you move through time the way the ballerina does, constantly haunted, constantly drifting. It's not confusing. It's intentional, it's immersive, and it makes you feel the same kind of disorientation she's feeling. You're not watching her from the outside. You're trapped in her mind, moving through her memories as if they're happening right now. And let's talk about the rhythm of sound in the edit because it's not just about visual pacing. The editor uses the soundscape to control the film's heartbeat. Sometimes the sound carries you through transitions, a gunshot, a siren, a breath. Sometimes the sound drops out completely, leaving you in this deafening silence that stretches out the tension until it almost snaps. The cuts follow these sound cues with laser precision, building a rhythm that hooks into your pulse. It's not random. It's not just stylish. It's deliberate storytelling through tempo, through timing, through the careful placement of every single cut. The pacing of Ballerina 2025 is like being on a roller coaster that doesn't have any straight tracks. It's all sharp turns, sudden drops, quiet climbs, and unexpected twists. The editing isn't there just to glue the scenes together. It's there to guide you through the emotional chaos, to make you feel the rush and the ache in equal measure. Every cut, every transition, every breath of silence has been carefully chosen to keep you locked inside the ballerina's relentless, pulse-pounding world. It's pacing that doesn't just tell a story. It feels like the story's pulse, always racing, always daring you to keep up. Let's go even deeper into the sonic world of Ballerina 2025, because the soundtrack and score here don't just sit politely behind the scenes. They roar, they whisper, they stalk you through the film like a silent partner in crime. The composer didn't just write music to decorate the film. No, they engineered a soundscape that feels like it's breathing with the ballerina. It's alive, it's reactive, it feels like it's inside her head, syncing with every step, every heartbeat, every fracture in her soul. The music is not an accessory here, it's a character, an emotional guide that never leaves your side. When the film kicks off, the soundtrack doesn't ease you in, it grabs you. You don't get a slow burn introduction, you're dropped straight into this world where the sound wraps around you like a vice. The beats are dark, pulsing, urgent. The music builds this low-level hum of tension that never really lets go, even in the quiet moments. You always feel like something's about to explode, like the music is whispering, "Stay ready." It's not a typical action movie sound either. It's not just loud drums and big brass sections trying to tell you, this is intense. Instead, it's electronic, it's gritty, it's got this industrial heartbeat that sounds like it was forged in some underground world of metal, sweat, and shadows. What's brilliant is how the composer layers that tough, sharp sound with delicate, broken melodies. You'll hear these fragile piano keys floating over heavy bass lines like they're about to snap in half. You get these soft strings that creep into the soundscape at the most unexpected times, like quiet memories fighting to be heard over the noise of survival. The contrast is delicious. It's like the ballerina herself. On the outside, she's a weapon, fast, lethal, unstoppable. But the music keeps reminding you that underneath all that strength, she's still a person. She's still broken, still grieving, still tethered to a life she can't fully leave behind. And this musical duality is not just clever, it's deeply emotional. And oh, the motifs. The film doesn't just throw out random tunes, it carries emotional themes that loop back and haunt you. There's this specific, almost ghostly melody that shows up whenever the ballerina is pulled back into her past. The first time you hear it, it's almost like background noise. But as the story unfolds, that melody grows heavier. Every time it resurfaces, you feel its weight a little more, like the sound is carrying the memory, the pain, the regret. By the time it reaches its final, most stripped-down form near the film's end, that melody isn't just music anymore. It's a gut punch. It's the sound of everything she's lost and everything she's still carrying, and it lands without mercy. The fight sequences, oh, they are built like musical assaults. The rhythm is sharp, the beats are brutal. The tempo is fast, but the soundtrack isn't there just to make noise. It matches the choreography so precisely that it feels like the ballerina and the music are fighting in sync. Each punch, each spin, each dodge feels like it's riding the rhythm. The music doesn't overpower the scene, it dances with it. Sometimes the beat pauses just for a fraction of a second to highlight a particularly vicious move, and then it snaps right back into the pulse like nothing happened. It's like the composer is editing the scene with sound in real time, making sure your heart doesn't get a chance to settle. And just when the fight hits its peak and you think the music is going to blow out your speakers, the sound drops into complete silence. No warning, no fade out, just silence that slams into you like hitting a brick wall. And in that silence, all you hear is her breathing, her heartbeat, her feet sliding against the floor. That silence is deafening, and it makes you hyper-aware that this isn't just about choreography, it's about survival. And then the music crashes back in, louder, faster, almost desperate, like the fight is surging back to life. But Ballerina 2025 doesn't just flex during action. The quiet, personal moments are where the soundtrack really shows its depth. The score gets intimate, almost like a whisper in your ear. It's during these scenes that you can hear the space in the music, the long, stretched-out notes, the aching pauses between sounds, the soft hums that feel like they're echoing inside her own head. The composer isn't afraid to let the music breathe. Sometimes a single, sustained violin note is all you hear, hanging there like a memory you can't shake off. Other times, the piano drips notes one by one, like they're falling from somewhere distant, each one carrying the weight of everything she's been through. And these aren't just emotional filler tracks. They are precision tools, used to make you feel the quiet agony she carries when no one else is watching. There's also something incredibly clever about how the soundtrack sometimes bleeds into the sound design. You're not always sure if what you're hearing is part of the score or part of the world around her. A ticking clock melts into the rhythm. The echo of her footsteps sounds like it's part of the beat. The hum of streetlights starts to blend with the synths. It creates this warped, almost dreamlike layer where reality and emotion collide. The composer isn't just adding sound to the film. They're bending sound around the story, folding it in so tightly that you can't pull it apart. Even the way the soundtrack plays with distortion is genius. Some tracks sound like they're being played through a cracked speaker, like the music itself is struggling to hold its shape, glitching and flickering just like her fractured state of mind. The sound warps, bends, unravels, and sometimes you can almost feel the composer dragging the melody through the dirt, smudging it, distorting it, until it sounds like it's falling apart. But then, at just the right moment, the music clears, becomes sharp, beautiful, whole again, like a flash of clarity breaking through all the noise. And the final stretch of the film? The way the score builds, layer upon layer, bringing back every motif, every rhythm, every heartbeat you've heard before. It's like the entire soundtrack has been climbing toward this one emotional summit. The music swells, rises, threatens to explode, and then it holds you in this final, breathtaking moment where everything, the sound, the silence, the story, collapses into a single, perfect emotional release. The last notes don't just fade out, they linger, like smoke in the air, refusing to leave you even after the credits start rolling. The soundtrack and score of Ballerina 2025 are not just sounds, they are the muscle, the memory, the emotional architecture of the film. They don't just accompany the story, they shape it, drive it, fight with it, cry with it. The music is woven so deeply into the DNA of the film that when it's over, you don't just remember the visuals. You remember the way it sounded, the way it felt inside your bones, the way it carried you through every twist, every punch, every silent heartbeat. The music doesn't fade. It stays with you, echoing long after the ballerina takes her final bow. Let's really unpack the dense layers of themes and messages in Ballerina 2025, because this movie isn't just about sharp choreography and thrilling showdowns. It's quietly asking some seriously big, messy, and uncomfortable questions about life, loss, and what it actually means to be free. The beauty of this film is that it doesn't hit you over the head with big speeches or obvious moral lessons. No one in this story stands in front of a mirror and says, "This is what I've learned." Instead, the film lets its themes seep into the cracks of the story, like water finding its way through stone, slowly, persistently, until by the end you realize you've been thinking about them the whole time. Let's start with revenge because, yes, that's the engine that drives the plot forward. But what's fascinating is how Ballerina 2025 treats revenge as something that isn't neat or satisfying. It's messy, it's ugly, and it comes with a price that's always heavier than you expect. The ballerina doesn't move through her mission like a hero ticking names off a list with a clean sense of justice. Every step she takes seems to pull her deeper into a spiral where victory feels just as bitter as defeat. The film seems to ask, when you finally get the revenge you've been chasing, what's left? It pokes at the hollowness of vengeance. The ballerina is chasing closure, but every fight, every target, every moment of supposed triumph leaves her more frayed and disconnected, not less. There's this brilliant tension between the thrill of watching her dismantle her enemies and the creeping dread that none of it is actually healing her. The movie keeps twisting the knife, showing us that revenge might feel like power in the moment, but it's often just another cage you build for yourself. Then there's the brutal exploration of identity. The ballerina's entire life has been shaped by people who trained her, used her, and told her who to be. She's spent so long moving to the rhythm of other people's expectations that when she finally tries to reclaim her own narrative, it feels like she's peeling off layers of skin. The film plays with the idea of masks, not literal ones, but the psychological ones we wear to survive. The ballerina's movements, her toughness, her precision, they're all masks she's been forced to perfect. But when she's alone, when the mission pauses, you catch these glimpses of someone who doesn't fully know what's left underneath. The story keeps circling around this quiet, painful question: are you still yourself when you've been built to be someone else? And can you ever break out of that mold, or are you forever stitched to the person they made you become? The theme of grief practically haunts the film like a shadow. The ballerina's grief isn't loud or theatrical. It's silent, persistent, and always lingering just out of reach. It's in the way she reacts to familiar places, to memories that flicker briefly before she shoves them aside. The film is full of moments where you feel her on the edge of collapsing, but she pushes forward anyway because stopping means facing everything she's lost. And it's not just grief for people, it's grief for herself, for the life she might have had, for the person she was before she became this weapon. It's almost like grief is stitched into the fabric of the story, quietly wrapping around every decision she makes. And then, power. The film dives deep into how power is constructed, who holds it, and how easily it can be abused. The organizations that built the ballerina didn't create her out of love. They built her to be useful. She was always a tool, always a means to an end. The movie does this brilliant job of peeling back the layers of those power structures and asking how much of our identities are shaped by the systems we're trapped in. It makes you think about the people pulling the strings, the faceless decision-makers who profit from violence while never getting their own hands dirty. The ballerina's journey is as much about tearing those power structures apart as it is about personal revenge. But what's genius is that the film never promises that those structures will crumble just because one person fights back. It leaves you sitting with the reality that sometimes burning one house down doesn't stop the entire city from thriving on the same broken foundation. Choice, or the illusion of it, is another razor-sharp thread running through the film. On the surface, it feels like the ballerina is making her own decisions, forging her own path, but the film keeps slipping in these uncomfortable reminders that maybe she's still following a script that was written for her long ago. Maybe the very act of choosing revenge, of continuing to fight, was programmed into her from the start. The film loves to blur the lines between freedom and conditioning. It plays with this idea that even when you think you're free, you might still be dancing to the rhythm someone else set for you. It's a subtle, psychological trap, and the story never fully tells you whether she escapes it. That uncertainty makes her journey feel even more haunting. And let's talk about love, because love is here, but it's complicated, jagged, and soaked in regret. This isn't a love story in the traditional sense. Love in Ballerina 2025 is fractured. It's love for people who may no longer love her back. It's love buried under layers of violence, shame, and distance. The film touches on the ache of wanting to return to something that no longer fits. There's no reunion where everything magically heals. There's no cinematic forgiveness waiting at the end. There's just the quiet, aching question: can you still be worthy of love when you've spent so long being something else? And maybe even worse, do you still know how to accept it? The movie also brilliantly weaves in loneliness. Even in a crowded city, even surrounded by enemies and allies, the ballerina is utterly alone. It's not the kind of loneliness you can cure with company. It's a soul-deep isolation that comes from knowing no one else can carry what you carry. The film lets this loneliness sit quietly beside her, like a constant, invisible partner. It's in the empty hotel rooms, the long walks through cold streets, the pauses where she looks around, and there's no one left to call, no one who really understands what she's been through. It's a loneliness she's chosen, maybe, but that doesn't make it less painful. And maybe one of the most poetic themes is the idea of movement as survival. The ballerina is always in motion, always dancing, always fighting, always moving forward, because the moment she stops, she has to confront herself. The choreography isn't just for show, it's part of her identity, part of her armor. The way she moves through the world is her language, her weapon, her shield. But the question hangs over every scene: what happens when the dance finally stops? Finally, there's this quiet thread of rebirth that never screams for attention but wraps the entire story in its grip. The ballerina is shedding layers, burning bridges, tearing down her past, but it's not a clean reset. The film is brutally honest about the fact that rebirth is messy, painful, and incomplete. She's not becoming something shiny and new. She's dragging the past with her, stitching it into who she's going to be next. The movie refuses to offer a polished, Hollywood-style redemption arc. Instead, it sits in the discomfort, in the scars, in the idea that maybe survival itself is the victory, even if you're still carrying the weight of everything you've lost. Let's dive even deeper into the mesmerizing world of Ballerina 2025, where visual effects and CGI don't just support the story. They perform right alongside the ballerina, dancing through every frame with their own rhythm and style. This isn't the kind of film that treats CGI as a last-minute gloss over the action. No, here the visual effects are carefully designed, almost like an extension of the ballerina's own movements and emotions, as if the world around her is constantly responding to her presence. It's not just about making things look cool or futuristic. It's about making you feel every spin, every breath, every flicker of light. You can tell the creators didn't want to just impress. They wanted to build an experience where the line between what's real and what's digital becomes beautifully blurred. Take the action sequences. These are not just stunts sprinkled with CGI. These are breathtaking ballets of violence where the visual effects dance in perfect sync with the ballerina's precision. There's something so satisfying about watching a character move through a battlefield with such grace that even the bullet trails, the sparks from clashing blades, and the shards of glass seem to move to her rhythm. The slow-motion moments are crafted so carefully that you feel like you're floating alongside her, watching every microsecond stretched out like it's suspended in time. And it's not just about the big, loud explosions. It's about the way a single drop of blood hangs in the air for a heartbeat too long. It's about how the environment seems to shudder in anticipation before she lands her next blow. There's a poetry to it, a digital choreography where every frame feels like a carefully painted canvas. And the environments? They're not just digital backdrops. They are living, breathing parts of the story. Rain doesn't just fall. It dances around her. It sparkles under neon lights. It creates ripples on the ground that pulse with tension. Fire doesn't just burn. It flickers and snaps with a kind of attitude, as if the flames themselves are characters watching the fight unfold. The cityscapes aren't just gray buildings. They pulse with color, with reflections, with layers that invite your eyes to explore every corner. You can almost smell the rain on the pavement, feel the chill of the mist rolling in, sense the weight of the concrete jungle pressing in on her. And none of this would work if the visual effects weren't so seamlessly stitched into the fabric of the film. There are moments where the visual effects boldly shift the perspective. It's not just about showing what's happening, it's about showing what the ballerina feels. Imagine corridors that stretch into impossible distances when she's chasing a target, rooms that pulse and flicker when she's under emotional strain, mirrors that fracture in strange, hypnotic patterns when her past comes crashing back. It's like the visual effects team stepped inside her mind and started painting her memories and fears directly onto the screen. It's surreal, it's sometimes disorienting, but it pulls you deeper into her world because you're not just watching what she does, you're living inside her head. And then there's the breathtaking contrast between the practical and digital elements. You can almost feel the director and the effects team balancing on a tightrope, making sure the CGI never drowns out the grit of the real world. Hand-to-hand combat feels weighty. The crunch of bones and the smack of fists have a physical punch, but then the visual effects sweep in to elevate those moments. Glass shatters in high-definition slow motion, debris spirals in balletic arcs, light fractures across the screen in a way that feels impossibly beautiful. This balance makes everything feel grounded, but still larger than life, like you're watching reality stretch to its cinematic limit. And oh, the attention to detail. It's not just about the big, showy set pieces. The CGI creeps into the smaller moments too, like the way dust floats lazily in a sunbeam slicing through a broken window, or the way the ballerina's breath fogs in the cold, catching the faintest glimmer of light, or the way gunpowder smoke curls and twists, hanging thick in the air as if time itself is reluctant to move on from the chaos. These aren't just digital effects, they're storytelling devices that layer mood and texture onto every frame. Sometimes the film plays with light and shadow in ways that feel almost dreamlike. You'll notice her silhouette framed in stark neon, the background melting into an abstract blur of color, while the edges of the screen pulse with faint digital flickers. It's as if the filmmakers are subtly reminding you that this world is both hyperreal and slightly artificial, like a memory you're not sure you trust. And just when you think you're settling into the rhythm, the film throws in an entirely different visual language, fractured timelines, shifting hues, dream sequence distortions, moments where reality buckles under emotional pressure, and you're left wondering if you're seeing the truth or the ballerina's broken perception. And the risks? Oh, the creative risks the visual effects team takes. They're not afraid to blur the edges of what's real, to let the visuals go just slightly surreal when the moment calls for it. Imagine fight scenes where the ballerina seems to leave behind shimmering echoes of herself, ghostly trails that flicker for a heartbeat before fading. Imagine the environment subtly warping around her as she moves, like the fabric of the world can't quite keep up with her pace. These aren't random flourishes. These are deliberate stylistic choices that add layers of emotion, tension, and beauty. The visual effects in Ballerina 2025 aren't just about spectacle, they're about depth, about pulling you into a heightened sensory experience where every particle, every reflection, every flicker of light is telling you something about the character, the stakes, the world. It's immersive, it's dynamic, and it's bursting with creativity that never once feels like it's showing off just for the sake of it. Instead, it feels like every digital brushstroke was added with purpose, to build a world you don't just watch, you feel. And that's what makes the visual effects in this film so endlessly captivating. Let's go even deeper into the incredible set design and locations of Ballerina 2025, because this film doesn't just build a world. It sculpts an entire universe that feels like it's always been there, pulsing quietly in the background, waiting for someone like the ballerina to step into it and ignite it. The locations don't feel like cardboard movie sets thrown together for a few shots. They feel ancient, weathered, lived in. They feel like places that have 1,000 stories of their own, stories that you can feel vibrating through the walls even if the film never tells them outright. You walk into each location with a ballerina, but you can sense that you're late to the party, that life has already happened there, that the rooms have memories, and you're just catching a fleeting glimpse before they disappear. The film doesn't just drop the ballerina into one city. It takes us on a tour through layers of environments that shift from glimmering to grimy, from sleekly modern to heartbreakingly old. We're not talking about generic streets and predictable warehouses. We're talking about abandoned opera houses where the velvet curtains still hang in tattered shreds, their deep red color faded by time, the wooden floorboards scarred by decades of forgotten performances. These aren't just pretty spaces, they are emotional spaces. When the ballerina moves through them, you can feel the echoes of her past, like the walls themselves remember her. Some of the most stunning locations are the ones you don't expect. A hidden training room tucked behind a crumbling bakery. A safe house disguised as a florist shop, where the heady scent of flowers clashes beautifully with the cold metal of the weapons stashed beneath the counters. Rooftops that become battlegrounds, where the glow of the city casts long, sharp shadows, and every rusted pipe and rickety fire escape becomes a tool of survival. The film transforms the mundane into the magnificent. It's not about grand palaces or exotic islands. It's about finding the beauty and danger hidden in forgotten corners. The urban settings are especially rich. Rain pours constantly, but not in a lazy, cinematic drizzle. It's thick, relentless, pooling in cracks in the pavement, turning streets into rivers, creating reflections that double the neon glow of street signs. The water runs through the story like a vein, always present, always shaping the mood. The city is alive with movement, flickering lights, distant sirens, steam rising from subway grates, but the ballerina's world often feels eerily quiet, like she's moving in a bubble of isolation, brushing past people who never see her, slipping in and out of these incredible spaces like a ghost. There's this brilliant interplay between tight, claustrophobic spaces and vast, open arenas. Sometimes the walls press in on her, tight corridors, narrow staircases, low ceilings that force her to move differently, to adapt. These moments make the city feel like it's swallowing her, forcing her into a corner. But then the film will suddenly burst open, throwing her onto wide streets, cavernous factories, or sweeping rooftops where she can breathe, where the fights become almost aerial ballets against the backdrop of a cold, sprawling skyline. The contrast between these spaces isn't random, it's emotionally charged. The tighter the space, the more intense the threat, the more personal the fight feels. The wider the space, the more the story feels like it's tipping toward freedom or finality. The props within these locations are mini masterpieces on their own. It's never just about what looks good, it's about what tells a story. A cracked teacup in a hideout suggests the life someone tried to have. A single bullet embedded in a wall says a fight happened long before the ballerina got there. The weapons aren't flashy, factory-made pieces. They're custom, modified, scarred by years of use, some pieces even patched together from other weapons. They feel like tools that have saved lives and taken them, like they carry their own ghosts. And the textures. Oh, the textures. The production design team made sure you can almost feel the world through the screen. You can sense the grit under your fingernails, the cold sting of metal railings in the rain, the soft give of leather gloves worn thin from constant use. The paint on the walls is always peeling in just the right places. The grime clings to subway pillars in greasy streaks, and even the lighting fixtures hum with the faint buzz of old electricity. These aren't clean, polished sets. They're raw, they're tangible, they're real in the most cinematic way possible. Let's not forget how the film uses specific locations to shape key moments. A final showdown isn't staged on some predictable street. It's set in an abandoned glass house where broken panes scatter across the ground like landmines, catching and refracting the light in dazzling, dangerous ways. A quiet conversation about grief doesn't happen in a sterile apartment. It unfolds in a forgotten garden where vines have wrapped around rusted gates and wildflowers bloom through cracks in the stone, creating a space that feels quietly sacred. The film constantly chooses locations that aren't just visually interesting but thematically rich. The places mean something. Even the ballerina's movements are influenced by the set design. She's constantly climbing, sliding, balancing, using the architecture around her like it's part of her choreography. She ducks beneath beams, springs off railings, weaves through hanging chains in old factories like she's moving through the strings of a giant harp. The locations aren't passive. They push against her. They challenge her. They shape the way she fights and the way she feels. There's also a beautiful subtlety in how the locations evolve with her story. The more she learns, the more memories she unpacks, the more the locations shift from cold, impersonal spaces to places that feel intimate, like they've always belonged to her. It's as if the set design is guiding her home, taking her deeper into the world's hidden layers until she finds the place where her story truly began. The beauty of Ballerina 2025's set design is that it never screams for attention, but if you look closely, you'll see that every brick, every crack, every worn-out sign is quietly speaking to you. The locations don't just serve the story. They're the story. They create a world that's dangerous and beautiful, brutal and delicate, real and yet just out of reach, like a half-forgotten dream that lingers long after the ballerina has left the frame. Let's dive even deeper into the beautiful, intricate world of the dialogue and script in Ballerina 2025, because this isn't just any collection of lines and conversations. This is writing that feels like it's been carved out of stone, etched with purpose, and layered with emotional landmines just waiting to explode when the right character steps on them. The dialogue in this film has its own rhythm, its own pulse, like the beating of a heart that quickens when danger is near and slows to a delicate hush when pain starts to rise to the surface. It's not the kind of dialogue that's desperate to sound clever. It doesn't scream for attention. It's smart, but in a quiet, deadly way, like the ballerina herself. There's this fascinating restraint in the way the characters speak to each other. It's almost like they've all agreed to use as few words as possible because in their world, words are currency and every syllable costs something. The ballerina especially feels like she's weighed each word before letting it leave her lips. Her dialogue often comes in short, sharp bursts, like a blade flicked open in the middle of a handshake. She doesn't chatter. She doesn't explain. She speaks in a way that feels honest to who she is, someone who's used to surviving, not storytelling. When she does allow herself to be vulnerable, those rare moments hit you like a truck because you know she doesn't waste breath on things she doesn't mean. The ballerina's words often carry double meanings. What sounds like a threat is sometimes a plea. What sounds like dismissal is sometimes protection. The script uses this delicious layering of intention and misdirection, where characters say one thing but mean another, and you, as the audience, are invited to decode the truth hiding underneath. It feels like a puzzle you're constantly trying to solve, and the script rewards you for paying attention. The supporting characters each bring their own flavor to the dialogue. Her allies tend to speak in this stripped-down, practical way, like people who've seen too much and have no patience for small talk. But every now and then, someone will drop a line that cuts through the noise with such clarity and weight that you'll find yourself pausing, replaying it in your head. There's this one old informant who speaks in fragmented memories. His sentence is broken like his spirit, and yet somehow his scattered words carry more meaning than a perfectly polished speech ever could. His dialogue feels like the emotional gravel on the road the ballerina is sprinting down. The villains, though, now that's where the script really flexes its muscles. They speak with this calculated precision, their words dripping with false civility. They don't shout. They smile. They talk in circles. They have this unsettling habit of asking questions instead of giving answers, forcing the ballerina and us to fill in the blanks, to wonder what game they're really playing. Their words have the weight of a noose, slowly tightening, and you realize they don't need to scream to terrify you. They just need to speak softly and wait for the silence to do the rest. The humor in the script sneaks up on you like a shadow. It's dry, it's fast, and it's laced with just enough bitterness to remind you that no one in this story has had an easy life. There's this brilliant scene where the ballerina and a grizzled ally are patching each other up after a brutal fight, trading barbed comments while stitching wounds, like their version of a heartfelt conversation is just throwing sarcastic grenades at each other until one of them cracks a smile. The humor isn't just there to make us laugh. It's how the characters cope, how they keep going, how they remind each other that they're still alive. Some of the best lines in the film don't even arrive with fanfare. They're quiet, tossed off almost carelessly, but they stick to you like burrs, sharp and persistent. A simple, "you came back," can hit you harder than a monologue about loyalty. A whispered, "I never left," can carry more weight than an entire backstory. The script trusts us to feel the gravity in these small moments, to lean in and catch the threads of meaning woven into the silence. The recurring phrases in the film are like haunting melodies that keep circling back. The script loves to echo itself. Words from the past return in new, brutal ways, spoken by different characters, under different circumstances, suddenly heavy with new meaning. What starts as a promise early on might reappear later as a threat. What seemed like a throwaway comment might come back in the final act as the emotional dagger that pierces everything. The writing is laced with these echoes, making the world feel tightly wound, interconnected, like every conversation has been building towards something we didn't even realize. Even the smallest lines feel like they've been sanded down to their purest form. There's no bloated dialogue, no over-explaining. The script assumes you can keep up. It respects you enough to let you piece things together. When characters talk about their pain, they do it sideways. They talk about the weather, about broken clocks, about old songs, but the real conversation is happening beneath that surface. And the payoff when you finally catch what they're really saying? It's devastating. The action sequences are laced with dialogue that flows so naturally with the movement, you almost forget how tricky it is to write that way. There are no cheesy pauses for dramatic one-liners. Instead, the words tumble out mid-fight, breathless, urgent, or sometimes with that bone-dry wit that makes the fight feel even more dangerous. There's this one rooftop scene where the back and forth between the ballerina and her opponent feels like verbal fencing, each line landing like a perfectly timed strike, the words dancing as fast as their bodies. And let's talk about silence, because the script is a master of it. The absence of words is just as carefully written as the dialogue itself. There are scenes where the silence drags out, tight like a pulled wire, where you're begging for someone to speak, and when they finally do, it's like the air rushes back into the room. The way the script uses silence feels like a conversation in itself, a language only the ballerina and the world around her understand. This is not a film where the script is just a vehicle to deliver the plot. This is a film where the script is the experience. It's soaked with emotion, it's crackling with tension, it's laced with humor that cuts like a knife. It's a script that lets words be weapons, shields, promises, and betrayals all at once. It's a script that dares you to keep up and rewards you when you do. And even when the film is over, the lines echo, the silences linger, and you find yourself still turning those words over in your head, wondering about all the things that were said and all the things that weren't. Ballerina 2025 is like stepping into an action thriller that knows exactly what sandbox it's playing in, but instead of building the same old castles, it flips the whole thing on its head and carves out something bold, sharp, and totally its own. When you hear the words action thriller, your mind probably jumps straight to the usual ingredients: fast-paced car chases, relentless gunfights, muscle-packed heroes, maybe a ticking time bomb or two. But here's where this film gets clever. It gives you all that pulse-pounding action, but not in the way you expect. It doesn't simply follow the genre's GPS. It takes scenic detours, backroads, and sometimes just spins the car in the middle of the street to see what happens. The revenge arc is familiar, sure. A lone warrior on a personal mission? That's classic. But what Ballerina 2025 does is stretch that skeleton into something far more intricate. This isn't just a tale of someone hunting down enemies. It's a story about identity, about surviving in a world that wants to crush you, and about finding power in spaces where you were told you didn't belong. It's not a copy-paste revenge plot. It's like the film is taking you by the hand and whispering, "You've seen this story before, but not like this." One of the coolest things about how the genre is handled here is the balance between brutal action and moments of delicate, almost eerie stillness. Most action films blast through every scene with explosions, fast cuts, and non-stop movement like they're afraid to lose your attention for even a second. But Ballerina 2025 isn't afraid to pump the brakes and let you sit in the tension. Sometimes, it's scarier when nothing is happening. A quiet hallway, a slow walk toward danger, the sound of a knife sliding back into its sheath. These aren't pauses, they're pressure points, building suspense in a way that makes the eventual eruption of action hit even harder. And speaking of action, let's talk about how this film performs within the genre. Yes, it delivers jaw-dropping fight choreography, but it doesn't rely on the typical hard-hitting, grounded street fights or the over-the-top, gravity-defying stunts we've come to expect. Instead, it fuses elegance with savagery. The fights feel like violent performances, brutal dances where every spin, leap, and strike isn't just about winning the fight. It's about expression. The ballerina's movements are filled with precision and flow, but with an underlying current of raw, survivalist energy. You're not just watching her fight. You're watching her tell a story through each motion, and that's something you don't often get in standard genre fare. There's also a smart play on genre expectations when it comes to weapons and combat styles. In most action thrillers, bigger is better, massive guns, armored vehicles, explosives. But this film often scales down the weaponry, making the battles more intimate and brutal. It's the flick of a blade, the crack of a bone, the sound of breath hitching in a close-quarters fight. It pulls you in so close that you can almost feel the adrenaline dripping off the screen. Now, the genre often likes to shove emotional beats to the sidelines to make room for more action, but Ballerina 2025 makes those emotional moments essential to the rhythm of the story. You can't separate the violence from the vulnerability. There are scenes where the silence between punches speaks louder than the gunfire. You feel the weight of every choice the ballerina makes, not just because of what it means for her survival, but because of what it costs her soul. She's not a bulletproof hero marching through a sea of faceless enemies. She's someone carrying loss, guilt, and a quiet fury that never quite burns out. The film also plays with the genre's typical portrayal of its villain. Usually, the antagonist is a swaggering powerhouse or a cold mastermind. Here, the villain isn't just a hurdle to overcome. They're a psychological mirror, someone who pulls at the ballerina's deepest fears and darkest impulses. Their confrontations aren't just about physical domination, they're about identity, about stripping away the lies we tell ourselves to keep going. It's a fascinating twist because it turns the fight scenes into more than just battles. They become arguments, confessions, desperate attempts to rewrite their own stories. And let's not skip over how Ballerina 2025 handles humor within the genre. This isn't the wisecracking hero dropping puns after blowing something up. No, this film slips in humor like a dagger between ribs, quick, sharp, and just enough to make you smirk before the next gut punch of intensity. The supporting characters often bring this sly edge of dry humor, but the ballerina herself has moments of understated sarcasm that make her feel like a fully fleshed-out person, not just a vengeance machine. It's not all about dodging the cliches, though. Sometimes, the film fully leans into them, but it does so with such style and self-awareness that you can't help but enjoy it. When a fight erupts in a grand, opulent theater, or when a final showdown plays out in a visually spectacular, slow-motion sequence, you know the film is tipping its hat to the genre, giving you the big, satisfying payoffs you've been waiting for. It knows what you came for, it just wants to give it to you in a way that feels a little fresher, a little sharper. Where other films might settle for formula, Ballerina 2025 feels like it's dancing on the edges of the genre, stretching it, twisting it, sometimes cracking it open to find something raw and new inside. It's not trying to erase what came before, it's remixing it, adding its own rhythm, spinning old moves into something unexpected. It feels like the film is asking the genre, what if we didn't always have to follow the map? What if we could cut a new path and see where it takes us? And honestly, that's where the magic happens. Let's dive even deeper into how Ballerina 2025 layers its social and cultural commentary, because this is where the film quietly becomes something much more than just a revenge thriller. Beneath the high-kick action and razor-sharp choreography, this story is humming with conversations about gender, power, grief, loyalty, class, performance, and personal freedom, and the best part is that the film never shouts these things at you. It laces them into the bones of every scene. First, let's talk about the social expectations that are stitched tightly into the fabric of the ballerina's world. From the very beginning, she's moving through spaces that are defined by rules she never agreed to, rules about how she should behave, how she should grieve, how she should carry herself in a world that isn't built to accommodate her rage. Society tells her she should be delicate, measured, a porcelain figure that performs softness, even when her insides are roaring. She's expected to fall in line, to move on from her pain, to let go of her fury, because that's what is acceptable. But this story laughs in the face of those expectations. It gives us a ballerina who uses the very thing society clings to, her grace, her discipline, her femininity, as weapons, turning all those stereotypes into sharp edges that cut through every barrier placed in front of her. And it doesn't stop there. The film constantly questions who gets to have power and who gets crushed by it. The ballerina's fight isn't just against the people who wronged her. It's against a system where wealth, status, and connections create an invisible wall that protects the guilty and buries the powerless. She doesn't have an army, she doesn't have unlimited resources, but what she does have is the sheer will to dismantle the hierarchy one step at a time. The story drags us through the lavish halls of privilege and into the grime of the streets, making sure we feel the stark contrast between those who play with power like it's a toy and those who are fighting just to survive. The film doesn't need to pause and give a speech about class. It shows it in the way doors close, in who has bodyguards, and who pays others to clean up their mess. There's also something brilliant about the way Ballerina 2025 explores the idea of grief, without giving in to the pressure of neat emotional arcs. Grief in this film is not a quiet backdrop, it's the engine that drives the ballerina forward. Society often wants people, especially women, to grieve in a specific, controlled way. Cry a little, fall apart briefly, but then you're expected to find closure. Tie up your feelings with a ribbon, and carry on like nothing happened. This film refuses that template. It says no, grief can be messy, it can be violent, it can be a storm that doesn't pass just because time has ticked by. The ballerina's grief is her shadow, her pulse, her fuel, and the story doesn't punish her for refusing to move on. It's almost as if the film is daring us to accept that sometimes revenge is the only language grief can speak. And, oh, the way this film plays with performance. Not just the performance on stage, but the daily performances people put on to survive. The ballerina is constantly shifting her mask. Sometimes she's the dutiful dancer. Sometimes she's the quiet observer. Sometimes she's a ghost slipping through the cracks. She performs roles to blend in, to gain access, to avoid suspicion. The film is sneaking in a question here. How many masks do we wear every day just to fit in? Just to navigate spaces that aren't built for us? The ballerina's masks become part of her strategy, and in a way, it's a powerful comment on how people, especially those from marginalized groups, often have to become shapeshifters just to move through the world safely. Let's not skip over the cultural weight of ballet itself in this film. Ballet is not just a backdrop. It's a symbol of centuries-old tradition, of perfection, of disciplines so strict it can suffocate you. The ballerina's rebellion isn't just personal, it's an artistic rebellion too. She's not rejecting the beauty of ballet, she's rejecting the cage it can become. She's taking the elegance and the precision and twisting them into something brutal, something that doesn't bow to anyone. It's a quiet cultural statement about how tradition can either be honored or weaponized, and sometimes the only way to truly break free is to burn the rulebook. The film also uses silence like a secret language. There are moments when the score drops out, when dialogue disappears, and all you hear is breath, heartbeat, the scrape of shoes against a wooden floor. In a world that's always buzzing with noise, those silences feel revolutionary. The film is telling us that power isn't always in the loudest gunshot or the flashiest explosion. Sometimes power is in the choice to be still, to say nothing, to let silence suffocate your enemy. The silence speaks louder than any monologue, and it's another way the film pushes back against the cultural demand for constant sound, constant explanation. Loyalty is another cultural thread that's woven through every layer of this story. In the world of Ballerina 2025, loyalty is currency. It's the most valuable thing you can offer and the most dangerous thing to demand. The ballerina's journey forces her to question what loyalty really costs and whether it's truly earned or simply bought. She's faced with impossible choices. Who can she trust? Who will betray her? And what is she willing to sacrifice for revenge? It's a complicated dance between personal ethics and the brutal code of the underworld, and it leaves the audience spinning with questions about whether loyalty is real or just another performance. Even the locations whisper cultural stories. The polished studios, the grand theaters, the forgotten corners of the city, they all carry their own weight. The places where art is celebrated, the places where deals are made in shadows, the places where people are erased, they all tell us something about who is valued and who is disposable in this world. The film never draws a big circle around these ideas. It trusts you to see them, to feel the discomfort, to notice the cracks in the marble. Ballerina 2025 doesn't hold your hand through any of this. It doesn't spoon-feed its commentary or pause to underline its themes. It weaves these ideas into every step, every breath, every scar on the ballerina's skin. The social and cultural commentary isn't a separate layer. It's baked into the very heart of the story, pulsing beneath the surface like a second heartbeat. The film trusts the audience to catch it, to peel back the layers, to sit with the discomfort and the questions it raises. And that's what makes it such a thrilling, thoughtful ride. Ballerina 2025 isn't just a film you watch. It's a film that grabs you by the collar, drags you into its heartbeat, and makes you feel like you're part of the mission. Audience engagement here isn't an accidental side effect. It's the very core of how this movie is built. It's as if the filmmaker sat down and said, "We're not going to let you just sit there quietly munching popcorn. We're going to make you sweat, make you care, make you think, and make you question everything." This film plays with your emotions like a symphony. One moment it's subtle, the next it's screaming through crashing cymbals, and the best part is you never really know what's coming next. The way Ballerina 2025 pulls you in is through this razor-sharp balance of style and substance. You're not just watching slick action sequences or beautifully choreographed fights for the sake of visual spectacle, although, trust me, those sequences will make your jaw drop. You're watching because you're emotionally invested. You're there clenching your fists not because the punches look cool, they do, but because you care deeply about what's on the line. Every hit feels personal. Every chase scene, every desperate fight, every breathless escape. These moments matter to you because the film has built a connection so real that you can practically feel your pulse syncing with the ballerina's rhythm. The audience engagement goes way beyond just excitement and thrills. There are moments in this film where you might actually forget to breathe. The tension coils so tightly that you find yourself leaning forward, sitting on the edge of your seat, waiting for something to break. And then, just when you think you know where things are going, the film pulls the rug out from under you. It gives you scenes that shock you, not in a cheap, jump scare kind of way, but in a gut punch, I can't believe they went there kind of way. It forces you to process what just happened while the story barrels forward, never giving you too much time to recover. But here's where it gets even more fun. Ballerina 2025 isn't content with just giving you a one-time adrenaline rush. It's designed to stay with you. You leave the theater with questions swirling in your mind. You replay conversations, second-guess character decisions, and suddenly you find yourself itching to rewatch it because you know there's more waiting for you beneath the surface. The film quietly dares you to look deeper, to pick up on the visual cues, to spot the layered symbolism, to catch the subtle shifts in the ballerina's expressions that speak louder than entire pages of dialogue. It's like a puzzle, and the pieces click more satisfyingly the more you pay attention. There's also this wonderful space the film leaves open for audience interpretation. It doesn't spell everything out for you. It respects you enough to let you sit in the ambiguity, to wonder whether revenge was truly worth the cost, whether justice was really served, whether peace was ever within reach for this character. And this is where the conversations start. This is where the film transcends being just another action thriller and becomes something you want to talk about with friends, something you want to argue over, something that might even change the way you think about certain choices. What's really brilliant is how the film invites different kinds of emotional reactions from different people. Some will come out of it fired up by the action and the breathtaking choreography. Others will walk away shaken by the raw grief and loneliness that quietly ripple underneath the surface. Some will see it as a brutal revenge saga, while others will see it as a story about reclaiming agency and identity. It's this emotional elasticity that makes the film so engaging. It gives you something no matter what kind of viewer you are. There are moments of pure tension where the silence in the room feels heavier than any explosion. There are moments where you find yourself smiling, not because something funny happened, but because you feel this surge of satisfaction watching a character take control of her destiny. And then there are those moments that will hit you like an emotional freight train, a whispered apology, a memory from the past, a quiet decision that changes everything. Ballerina 2025 makes you feel without needing to force it. It gets under your skin without you even noticing. This is not the kind of film you watch, forget, and move on. This is the kind of film that lingers in your head, that pulls you back for repeat viewings, that leaves you catching your breath at the smallest of details. The audience isn't just watching a story unfold. They are part of the journey, living each beat, each choice, each consequence right alongside the characters. Whether you leave the film heartbroken, exhilarated, conflicted, or simply stunned, one thing is certain. You'll feel something. And that's exactly what makes Ballerina 2025 a masterclass in audience engagement. When you really open up the comparison box and lay Ballerina 2025 side by side with its genre cousins, franchise siblings, and thematic neighbors, you start to see how this film both dances to a familiar rhythm and boldly steps into its own groove. Sure, on paper it shares the revenge thriller DNA with John Wick, Atomic Blonde, Kill Bill, Peppermint, and even The Villainous. But what sets Ballerina 2025 apart is the way it feels like it's moving in the same universe, but breathing entirely different air. It's like being at a family reunion where everyone's wearing tailored suits and carrying gold-plated pistols. And here comes Ballerina 2025, barefoot, bleeding, and focused on a mission that's less about honor and more about healing through destruction. Let's start by talking about John Wick, because let's be honest, that's the franchise everyone's going to connect this film to immediately. John Wick is the house that built this universe. The suits, the continental, the high table, the silent codes, the ballet of bullets, all of it. But where Wick's world is about precision, reputation, and the cold mechanics of consequence, Ballerina 2025 takes that world and floods it with emotion. Wick's character is almost mythological, a ghost you summon with a whisper, a man whose rage is like clockwork, measured and inevitable. But the ballerina's rage is raw, cracked, and constantly on the verge of spiraling out of control. She isn't a legend in the eyes of her world yet. She's someone stumbling through grief, through trauma, and finding her deadliest strength in her most vulnerable places. It's like the John Wick universe, but viewed through a cracked mirror smeared with old tears. Now, stack it against Atomic Blonde. That film is a visual powerhouse. All slick camera work, ice-cold espionage, and a lead who's wrapped in layers of secrets and cigarettes. Atomic Blonde hits hard, but it also keeps its emotional core tightly sealed behind sunglasses and vodka. Ballerina 2025 throws that emotional distance out the window. It peels the character open. It doesn't just want you to marvel at the fight choreography. It wants you to feel every painful step that led to the fight. Where Atomic Blonde dazzles with neon and soundtrack-driven montages, Ballerina 2025 roots itself in a quieter kind of pain. It's less interested in Cold War politics and more obsessed with personal wars. It asks you to lean in closer, to see the bruises that aren't just on the skin but buried deep in the soul. When you bring Kill Bill into the conversation, things get really interesting. Kill Bill is the gold standard of revenge-driven storytelling with a female lead. It's bombastic, unapologetic, hyper-stylized, and soaked in unforgettable monologues and larger-than-life set pieces. Tarantino crafted a revenge saga that felt like an operatic bloodbath, a story that wasn't afraid to slow down for philosophical conversations between moments of pure chaos. Ballerina 2025 doesn't try to imitate that opera. It feels smaller, grittier, more claustrophobic. Where Kill Bill makes revenge feel like a hero's journey with chapters, swords, and samurai showdowns, Ballerina 2025 makes revenge feel messy, ugly, and necessary in a way that gnaws at the character's humanity. It's not a sweeping odyssey. It's a cornered fight in a hallway where every decision echoes forever. Then we can't ignore The Villainess, a film that gave us those unforgettable POV action sequences and a protagonist whose life unraveled in a twisted, non-linear timeline. The Villainess thrives on style, on camera trickery, on a sense of breathless motion that almost leaves the story gasping to keep up. Ballerina 2025 isn't chasing those tricks. It slows the camera down when it needs to, lingers on a glance, holds the silence just long enough to make you shift in your seat. It knows when to give you spectacle, but it refuses to sacrifice emotional weight just to look cool. It doesn't want to disorient you. It wants you to sit inside the pain. Compared to something like Peppermint, which also gave us a woman on a revenge rampage, Ballerina 2025 feels less formulaic and more immersive. Peppermint leaned heavily on genre tropes, loss, training montage, kill list, final showdown, but Ballerina 2025 twists those expectations. It doesn't serve up a predictable kill checklist. It complicates things. It lets the protagonist question herself, falter, and grieve while the story keeps tightening its grip. And when you look at it from the perspective of where it sits within the John Wick franchise, it's fascinating. The mainline Wick films are sleek chess games wrapped in gunfire and etiquette. Ballerina 2025 is more like a knife fight in a basement. It's intimate, it's dirty, it's personal. It's not about the rules, it's about breaking them. It's not about the high-ranking players, it's about the person trapped at the bottom trying to climb out without losing her soul. While the Wick films thrive on carefully choreographed showdowns with clean exits, Ballerina 2025 thrives on fights that leave scars, not just physical ones, but the kind that haunt you in quiet moments. If you line it up against other female-led action thrillers in the genre, you realize that Ballerina 2025 is deliberately pulling away from the trend of making the female assassin untouchable. It's not trying to make her a perfect killing machine. It's not just giving us a woman who's tough, it's giving us a woman who's complicated. She's fierce, but she's fragile. She's deadly, but she's lost. She's smart, but she's emotionally wrecked. And that's where the film opens up a new lane within a genre that sometimes feels overcrowded with copy-paste action heroes. So when you step back and really stretch out the comparison, you see that Ballerina 2025 respects the genre's greatest hits, but it's not trying to sing the same tune. It's more like a remix with its own pulse, a story that knows the old dance steps but deliberately changes the beat. It's part of the family, but it's the rebellious cousin who refuses to follow the house rules. It's the film that chooses to lean into emotional chaos instead of polished perfection. It's not here to simply echo what came before. It's here to carve out a space where grief, rage, and survival are tangled in a way that feels painfully, beautifully human. Let's dive even deeper because Ballerina 2025 isn't just a stylish action film. It's like a secret treasure chest of symbols and metaphors that just keep unfolding the more you look. It's almost like the filmmakers carefully hid these little narrative Easter eggs throughout the story, challenging us to dig beyond the gunfights and chase scenes to discover the raw, intimate emotions stitched underneath. It's not just about a ballerina turned assassin. It's about what happens when beauty and violence collide, when performance becomes survival, and when silence screams louder than words. And the film takes every chance to remind us of this through its symbols. Let's talk about those shoes again because they are absolutely drenched in meaning. They're not just worn-out slippers. They're a visual diary. Every scuff, every thread coming loose, every darkened toe tells a story. Sometimes the shoes are carefully placed, almost like an offering, and sometimes they're abandoned in the middle of chaos. These shoes evolve along with her. They start as delicate tools of art and slowly become ghostly relics of a life slipping through her fingers. When she wears them in battle, it's not just a cool image. It's like she's carrying a piece of her old self into this new, brutal world, stubbornly refusing to let go of who she was. Mirrors are a quiet storm throughout the film. They're everywhere, but never just to look pretty. They distort, they fracture, they reflect half-truths. Sometimes they catch moments that the character herself isn't fully seeing, almost like the mirrors have a life of their own. One of the most powerful things the film does is show her looking at her reflection after every major turning point, when she's doubting, when she's mourning, when she's raging. The mirror becomes a silent therapist, a witness to her unraveling. It's not just a reflection, it's a constant reminder that she's splitting in two, the ballerina who danced with grace and the assassin who dances with death. The breaking of mirrors isn't just for dramatic flair, it's a scream of frustration, a symbolic shattering of who she thought she was. And the snow, it's practically a character. Snow covers the streets, the rooftops, the hideouts. But this isn't the soft, fluffy snow from fairy tales. It's the kind that bites your skin, slows your steps, weighs you down. Snow in this story isn't peaceful, it's suffocating, relentless. It falls like forgotten memories, layers upon layers that refuse to melt. Sometimes the snow is so heavy that her tracks vanish behind her almost instantly, as if the world itself is trying to erase her path. It's such a powerful metaphor for grief, how memories get buried, how the coldness of loss tries to cover everything, but you can still feel the weight under your boots with every step. The dance studio? Oh, that place is haunting. It's not just a building, it's her personal time capsule. The cracked mirrors, the dusty bars, the torn posters from performances long past, it's all soaked in nostalgia and loss. Every time she walks into that space, it's like she's stepping into a memory she can't escape. The studio becomes a silent battlefield where she fights with her old self. It's the place where she once learned grace and discipline, and now it's a shrine to what's gone. The way the film lingers in that space, the way it lets the silence hang there like a thick fog, it's quietly heartbreaking. It's not a training ground anymore, it's a place where ghosts live. The choreography of the fights continues to weave that metaphorical thread. It's like the director is asking us to see these brutal battles as twisted performances. Her fighting style isn't just about efficiency, it's about rhythm, balance, form. She spins and pivots like she's still on stage, but now the audience is made of people who won't live to applaud. It's almost ironic. Her most graceful movements are the most deadly. There's a scene where she's surrounded, and you can practically hear the rhythm of an invisible orchestra guiding her every step. It's not a fight. It's a tragic ballet set to the music of gunfire. The lullabies are woven into the soundscape like a ghostly whisper, popping up when you least expect them. They bleed through the chaos, reminding her of someone she's lost, tugging at memories she's trying to suppress. Those lullabies aren't just musical choices, they're emotional landmines. The contrast between their softness and the brutal visuals around them makes them hit even harder. They aren't loud, but they leave echoes that linger. The film uses them to remind her, and us, that no matter how far she's drifted into violence, there's still a part of her anchored to something tender, something irretrievably gone. And then the scars. The film doesn't shy away from showing them. These aren't just background details, they're stories carved into skin. The camera lingers on them like it's reading a diary. Each scar is a chapter. Some are fresh, angry, swollen. Some are faded, like they've been quietly carried for years. They map her journey in a way no words could. They remind us that every battle leaves a mark, and even if you survive, you're not untouched. Her body becomes a canvas painted with pain and survival, and the film never lets you forget it. The act of falling becomes a subtle but constant metaphor. Whether it's collapsing from exhaustion, slipping in the snow, or even falling emotionally into rage or grief, it's always there, lurking. The film captures these moments like tiny punches to the gut. Falling doesn't always mean failure. It sometimes signals release, surrender, or even rebirth. Sometimes she falls, and it's the only moment she looks free. The film plays with this beautifully, letting falling mean different things at different times, like a visual poem that keeps rewriting itself. Even everyday objects like a music box, a cracked window, or ribbon are used like secret narrative keys. They pop up again and again, like soft echoes of a past that won't let go. They aren't flashy or obvious. They're quiet symbols that patiently wait for you to notice them, to stitch together their meaning as the story unfolds. The film doesn't spoon-feed any of this to you. It trusts you to catch these threads, to connect the visual dots. Ballerina 2025 doesn't just tell you a story. It paints it in symbols. It whispers it in metaphors. It dances it in silence and snow. The symbols breathe beneath the action, beneath the bullets, beneath the blood. They make the film richer, more haunting, and infinitely more satisfying for those who choose to look closely. It's the kind of movie where the symbols stick to you long after the credits roll, where you find yourself replaying certain moments in your head just to ask, what was that really about? It's not just a ballet of violence, it's a symphony of meaning if you let it be. Ballerina 2025 doesn't just sneak into the John Wick universe like a quiet footnote. It storms in like it was always meant to be part of the story, waiting in the wings for the right moment to step forward. When you dive into this film, you realize it's not simply an extra tale running parallel to John Wick's blood-soaked journey. It's a powerful thread woven deep into the very fabric of the Wick mythos, adding layers to the world that fans thought they already understood. And what makes it truly exhilarating is that Ballerina 2025 feels like the franchise is finally turning the camera towards the stories that were only whispered about in the background. Those side characters with haunted eyes who you knew had their own history, their own vendettas, their own impossible missions. This film doesn't treat the John Wick world as just a setting. It treats it like living, breathing history, rich with traditions, codes, and rivalries that go far beyond one man's quest for vengeance. What's so fascinating is how the film slides itself perfectly into the timeline, not with loud announcements but with careful, deliberate moments. It stitches itself right between the events of John Wick, Chapter 3, Parabellum and John Wick, Chapter 4. But instead of following John's trail of destruction, it pulls us onto a completely different path, one that runs parallel yet feels just as dangerous, just as urgent. The High Table's influence isn't just felt through assassins and gold coins anymore. It's seen in the silent, oppressive control over institutions like the Ballet Academy, where grace and elegance are sharpened into lethal weapons. The film opens up new parts of this underworld that John's story never paused long enough to explore. You can almost feel the ghosts of old legends lingering in these places, in the training halls, in the back alleys where deals are made, in the long, quiet glances between characters who know far more than they say. It's like Ballerina 2025 is unlocking secret rooms that were always there, just out of sight. And the way the film connects to the franchise is not just through passing cameos or familiar locations. It digs into the lineage, into the culture, into the heritage of this deadly society. It reveals the machinery that keeps this world turning, showing that there are families within families, factions within factions, each with their own brutal methods and unwritten rules. The Roma, who briefly appeared in Parabellum, now get the spotlight, and we get to see their traditions, their scars, their unforgiving training that shaped not just John Wick, but countless others. The ballet school isn't just a front. It's a crucible where survival is carved into bone, and the students don't just learn to dance. They learn to kill with precision and poise. What's even more exciting is how Ballerina 2025 dares to challenge the structure of its own universe. The John Wick films have always been about the individual versus the system, John versus the high table. But here, it's not just a single rebellion. It's a question of legacy, of inherited violence, of whether anyone can ever truly escape this life once they've stepped into its shadow. This film feels like it's asking if the cycle can ever be broken or if every ballerina, every assassin, is simply dancing the same deadly choreography with no way out. It's not just expanding the franchise, it's adding philosophical weight to it. The connections to other films aren't just surface level, they're the connective tissue that makes this world feel real and sprawling. When familiar faces pop up, it's not because the film wants to remind you of past glories. It's because those characters naturally belong here, moving through this story with their own agendas, their own stakes. It's thrilling to see how events ripple across the franchise timeline, how one person's revenge can quietly destabilize alliances that seemed rock solid in Wick's story. You start to realize that while John Wick is out there waging his war, there are dozens of other battles being fought in the shadows, each with the power to tip the balance. Ballerina 2025 also brings a cultural richness that feels like a breath of fresh air within the franchise. It digs deeper into the Eastern European roots of the Roma, blending old-world rituals with the sleek, deadly modernity of the assassin's life. The settings, the costumes, the traditions, all of it feels grounded and steeped in history, which makes the violence hit even harder because it's not just random chaos. It's violence shaped by centuries of survival, pride, and bitter loyalty. And in the grand scheme of the John Wick universe, Ballerina 2025 feels like a pivotal chapter that will almost certainly echo into future stories. It's like watching a parallel revolution unfold, one that could either run quietly alongside John's war or crash violently into it. The movie plants so many seeds, unresolved rivalries, powerful new players, hidden histories, that it feels like the story is far from over, like this is just the beginning of a much larger expansion. You start to sense that the John Wick franchise isn't just a straight road. It's a spiderweb of stories, all interconnected, all pulsing with life, and Ballerina 2025 is one of those crucial threads that might soon pull the entire web in a new direction. It's not just a spin-off, it's a bold declaration that this universe is far bigger, far more dangerous, and far more fascinating than we ever imagined. When you really dive deep into the budget and box office story of Ballerina 2025, you uncover a narrative that's almost as thrilling as the film itself. This movie didn't just stroll onto the cinematic stage, it arrived with power, purpose, and a bank account that meant business. The studio knew this wasn't just another spin-off to toss out and hope for the best. This was a meticulously planned expansion of one of the most stylish, adrenaline-fueled universes modern cinema has delivered, and the budget reflected that ambition. We're talking about the kind of budget that allows you to shut down entire city blocks to film a chase scene, the kind that lets you fly a production crew across the globe to capture authentic backdrops instead of relying on green screens. The money here wasn't spent frivolously, it was spent with precision. Each dollar aimed like a bullet to ensure that the audience would feel immersed, entertained, and completely locked into the world from the very first moment. And this wasn't one of those films where the budget ballooned out of control because of delays or reshoots. No, Ballerina 2025 moved like its protagonist, graceful, deadly, and completely focused. The production seemed to know exactly what it wanted, and the filmmakers made sure to pour resources into the details that would truly elevate the film. The raw, brutal choreography of the fight scenes, the intimate and carefully designed ballet sequences that carry emotional weight, and the lavish, dangerous corners of the assassin underworld that had to feel alive, not artificial. Even the costumes, drenched in subtle symbolism, were crafted with an attention to detail that screamed high-quality investment. Now, when it comes to the box office story, this film didn't just aim to break even, it showed up to dominate. From the moment those first trailers dropped, the buzz was electric. It's like the audience had been waiting for this exact flavor of action film, a story told through the lens of a female assassin with the cold precision of John Wick, but wrapped in her own tragic, emotional tapestry. People flocked to theaters, curious to see how this story would stand on its own. The opening weekend was a thunderous success, with packed theaters and online chatter exploding with excitement. Social media became a playground of fight scene breakdowns, hidden Easter eggs, and character analysis. The film didn't just pull in the loyal John Wick fans. It captured the attention of those who love a good revenge thriller, those fascinated by ballet, and even those drawn in by the promise of a lead character who could crack bones and hearts in the same scene. What's fascinating is how well Ballerina 2025 managed to hold its position at the box office week after week. Some movies come out swinging on day one, but fizzle out quickly. This one had stamina. It kept pulling people back. Fans returned for second and third viewings, dragging their friends along to experience the spectacle. The box office didn't just spike, it stayed strong. Internationally, the film performed exceptionally well, especially in markets that have always devoured stylish action cinema. Countries like South Korea, Japan, and various European territories embraced the film's mix of elegance and violence, propelling it to impressive global earnings. The marketing was nothing short of genius. They didn't just rely on the Wick name to sell the film. They let Ballerina 2025 carve its own path, while still subtly weaving it into the fabric of the larger universe. They teased the connections without making the movie feel like a dependent spin-off. The posters oozed style with minimal text and maximum intrigue. The teaser trailers didn't give away the big moments. They just let the atmosphere simmer, and that silence built anticipation in a way that endless trailers never could. It was as if the studio trusted the audience to be curious, to want to uncover the story themselves. When you break it all down, the balance between the film's budget and its box office success feels almost poetic. The money was spent wisely, not wastefully. The film didn't just chase spectacle, it chased substance. Every beautifully destructive fight, every haunting musical note, every silent, tension-filled stare across a dimly lit ballroom, it all felt earned, and the audience showed their appreciation by turning this movie into a box office powerhouse. The investment paid off not just in dollars, but in cultural footprint. It's the kind of film that doesn't just hit hard in theaters. It lives on in conversations, in fan theories, in future franchise possibilities. And don't forget the secondary revenue streams. The buzz didn't die after the theatrical run. Streaming rights were snatched up quickly, and the film became one of those must-watch titles on digital platforms. People bought the merch, from those iconic ballet-inspired assassin daggers to posters of the film's most visually stunning moments. Home video sales soared, not because people just wanted to watch it again, but because they wanted to own a piece of the story. In the end, Ballerina 2025 became one of those rare financial stories where the numbers weren't just impressive, they told their own gripping tale. A tale of smart spending, razor-sharp execution, and an audience that was ready to throw their money at something that respected their craving for thrilling, emotionally charged cinema. It's not just a movie's success, it's a financial symphony where every note hit perfectly in time. Let's dive even deeper into where you can catch Ballerina 2025 and why each option gives you its own unique flavor of the experience. When Ballerina 2025 first hit the big screen, it wasn't just another movie release, it was an event. It's the kind of cinematic spectacle that practically screams for the grandeur of a theater, where the screen stretches so wide you feel like you're standing right there with the characters, dodging bullets, holding your breath in silent corridors, and hearing every subtle footfall echo in full surround sound. There's something electric about watching a film like this in a theater, surrounded by an audience that's just as locked in as you are. You can feel the shared tension in the room, you can hear the collective gasps when a plot twist lands, and you can sense the unspoken appreciation when the fight choreography hits those precise, jaw-dropping beats. It's an energy that simply can't be replicated anywhere else. But theaters are just the starting line for this film's journey. After its theatrical run, Ballerina 2025 quickly strutted its way onto digital platforms, knowing that not everyone could catch it on opening weekend. Maybe you missed it in cinemas, maybe you just prefer the pause button, or maybe you want to rewatch that hallway fight scene over and over again, because it's just that good. Digital rentals and purchases are where this movie settles right into your living room, your phone, your tablet, your laptop. Wherever you like to watch, this film is ready to follow you. And what's great about the digital release is the flexibility it gives you. Want to crank the volume at home and feel like you've built your own mini theater? Go for it. Prefer to watch it in bite-sized segments across your lunch breaks? Totally doable. You control the pace, and the film is more than happy to roll with your schedule. Then comes the streaming phase, where Ballerina 2025 finds its long-term home. This is where the film becomes effortlessly accessible. You can fire it up at a moment's notice. Whether you're introducing it to a friend for the first time, revisiting your favorite sequences, or just letting it play in the background while you absorb the gorgeous visual and sonic layers all over again. And let's talk about streaming marathons. Maybe you're not watching Ballerina 2025 in isolation. Maybe you're stacking it alongside the John Wick films, or diving into a whole weekend of action thrillers. Streaming opens the door to that kind of curated, binge-worthy experience where the story and style can spill over into hours of non-stop cinematic goodness. But wait, the real treat? That's when you grab the physical copy, the Blu-ray or special edition that's loaded with all the bonus content that's like finding the film's secret levels. This is where you get the full backstage pass. Director's commentary that unpacks why certain shots lingered longer, why specific color palettes were chosen, how the action sequences were timed down to the millisecond. Behind-the-scenes reels that reveal the brutal training the cast endured to make every ballet movement flow seamlessly into a combat maneuver. Interviews with the cast and crew that pull back the curtain on character motivations, stunt coordination, and the painstaking detail behind every visual beat. And let's be honest, there's something satisfying about owning a physical copy of a movie you know you're going to revisit. It's like adding a trophy to your personal film library. For the true enthusiasts, watching this film isn't just about the story, it's about the vibe. Some people might choose to watch it on a lazy Sunday afternoon, lights low, volume up, no distractions, fully absorbing every ounce of the mood and tension. Others might cue it up during a movie night with friends, popcorn flying, everyone leaning forward in anticipation of those sharp twists and ferocious showdowns. The beauty is, this film delivers in every setting. Whether you're a solo viewer soaking in the cinematography or part of a buzzing crowd sharing gasps and laughter, Ballerina 2025 finds a way to grip you. It's also one of those films that keeps its pulse in pop culture, sparking conversations, debates, fan theories, and rewatches. People don't just watch Ballerina 2025, they dive into it, they talk about it, they pick apart its layers, and they share it. It's the movie that pops up in group chats with messages like, "You have to see this fight scene," or "that music drop." Legendary. Whether you caught it in the cinema, streamed it at home, rented it digitally, or shelled out for the collector's edition, this is a film that's going to stick with you. It doesn't matter where you're watching, it matters that you do, because every frame, every note, every moment is designed to pull you in and keep you there, fully locked into its mesmerizing rhythm.